So how do you maintain romantic relationships? What would be our steps for doing that? So what we want to take a look at is this idea of maintenance strategies and also maintaining romance across distance and deciding if it's correct, if you want to continue to maintain that relationship over time. So let's take a look at maintenance strategies. So there's a couple. So there's positivity, assurances, sharing tasks, acceptance, self-disclosure, relationship talks, and social networks. So the first one that we're going to look at is this idea of positivity. And this relates to being kind of cheerful and optimistic in how you're relating to your partner. Maybe doing unsolicited favors or giving unexpected gifts are a couple of the elements that you can look at here. You want to also look at making sure that your interactions with your partner are enjoyable. So creating situations where they're going to have a positive experience. So maybe if they have allergic reactions to certain things, don't put them in situations where that's going to be a challenge for them. Give them compliments and keep things kind of fun and upbeat and romantic, whatever romantic means to you. I'll probably talk about this more in class, but there's a book called 5 Love Languages by a guy named Gary Chapman that was recommended to me, and I read it a while back. And it does look at some different types of love languages, and there's a quiz that you can take on this. And it can be helpful to understand how you approach love. So the ones that they have listed in the book are words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And where this becomes important is if you and your partner don't share the same love language, then you run into challenges because they're giving you love the way that they want to get it, and you're giving them love the way that they want to get it. I mean, the way that you want to get it, and then you're not satisfying the other person. So sometimes figuring out what is important to them allows you to give them something in a way that they're going to be able to appreciate it. Because I think there's lots of people who say, hey, I know you don't tell me you love me. I do it all the time. I do this and this and this for you. And they're like, but you don't tell me. So that person needs to have the words stated to them, and the other person does it by acts of service, and that's how they show it. So you're going to find out that, if you kind of don't pay attention to the other person's expectations or ways that they send and receive love, then you're going to misconstrue information. And so that idea of encoding and decoding messages becomes more complex because we aren't understanding the way that the other person expresses or wants to receive love. So it can be really helpful to have a sense of how that other person does that, and showing different ones, whether you're spending good quality time with that person or giving them little gifts can be just nice gestures in general. But if you really know what it is that gets them excited or makes them feel appreciated, that's a much easier approach, and actually I was going to say just save you time in the end, because you can just do what they need, and then they're able to feel like they're being loved, whether it's your way of receiving it or not. And then you can always share your way of feeling loved as well, so that they get an opportunity to experience that as well. So one of the things it says in here also is, things that you don't want to do is don't complain, don't whine or pout about not getting your way, and don't criticize when someone gives you something. So if you want it in a different way, then share that with them. If you're in a relationship with someone, maybe you both take the quiz, and then at least you both understand kind of how the other person receives love and what's important to them. So that can be a valuable piece of information in a long-term relationship. Assurances are messages, and they are stated to emphasize how much the other person means to you. They can also demonstrate how important that relationship is. And if you talk about your future together, I mean, that suggests that there's something that's long-term here and that you're going to be with that person for quite some time. So that can be another powerful way of approaching it. And again, if you can kind of focus on words or actions that are going to apply to your partner, whatever it is that is a good way for them to receive it, that's a good way to organize your experience. So tell your partner how devoted you are to this relationship, and again, just future, what you're seeing for the future for the two of you. Talking in that we language, helping them feel like they feel safe and secure, that the relationship is going to be ongoing for a period of time. And let them know that they are a priority to you. So put your cell phone down and focus on the people that you care about. So make eye contact with them, and the cell phone is not that important. It's something that you can do when you're not paying attention to them. The idea of flirting with somebody else while you're with your partner is really, I'm just going to say it, it's dumb. Don't do that. Whatever things going on in your head at that moment, that's not the way to make somebody feel appreciated. So don't flirt with somebody else while you're with your person. Or don't tell them, hey, don't count on me in the long term. That's a good way for them to not feel very secure. I think that's part of the assurances, is just helping the other person feel secure, like you're going to be there for a while and you're going to be, you guys are there to take care of each other kind of thing, versus, hey, you're on your own, dude. That doesn't feel very good. Sharing tasks, having mutual responsibility about chores, and making sure that things are kind of divided in a logical way for your relationship. So that might encourage you to have a conversation about what that looks like. What would you like the division of labor to look like? If there's certain parts of house chores that you enjoy, maybe let your partner know that, so that you can take that on as your piece, and then everybody's not trying to do the same thing. And so you have a little bit more of the division of labor. And ask how you can help them. So rather than having them have to ask you all the time, maybe you can look for ways that you can support them. And offer preemptive support. That's my language for it. Offer them support, anticipate their needs, is what I'm saying. Come up with ways of figuring out what they might need. So you don't want to, and if you've got somebody that's avoiding trying to do tasks with you, that's probably not somebody that's in a partnership relationship. If they never ask you, or you don't ever ask them how you might be able to support them further, probably not cool. And don't expect somebody to do all of the chores and running around and not have any reciprocation. I mean, if you're in a situation where you're not getting any reciprocation and you're doing a whole bunch for the other person, probably doesn't feel very good. So definitely want to create situations where you have shared tasks and shared workloads. So acceptance. So, gosh, I think it just feels good. I mean, if you feel like somebody just accepts you for who you are, even though you're a goofball and you do dumb things, or you have weird behaviors, there are things that, I think all of us do, that came from our family of origin, or we've just developed over time, that someone else might see as being a little weird. So it's nice just to be accepted for our little unusualnesses. Have them people forgive your flaws. I mean, what the heck? I mean, if you make a mistake, people need to be forgiven, and we need to be forgiven. So it shouldn't be so serious. Support your partner in their decisions. Help them feel like they're doing good stuff, and hey, I'm here to help you. So you let me know what direction you want to go, and we'll figure it out. And then be patient. The other person might have bad moods. They might have things that happen. If it happens all the time, probably not cool. But if the person just has an occasional bad mood or something, be patient with them, and maybe move through that, and don't hold it over their heads forever. Yeah, and And telling people that you wish that they were different or being critical of them, probably not going to help them feel very accepted. So I think it really helps a person feel secure, again, if they feel that level of acceptance for you. So in addition to acceptance, is you want to have this idea of trust and creating a place where people feel like they can share what they're feeling and and allow other people to share with them what they're feeling, and creating a place that feels predictable and trustworthy and ethical. So being able to tell your partner about your fears and vulnerabilities, that's a powerful place to be. And one of the things that you find for being a therapist, sometimes you have to share a little bit about yourself to get the other person to feel a little more comfortable about sharing about themselves. So keep that in mind. If you're in a relationship, you might have to give a little bit of your information, and then they would be feeling more safe about giving some of their information. And sharing of feelings and emotions with your partner lets them see that you're more emotional. And I know the idea that guys don't do that, I don't know. I mean, I think that may have been modeled by their parents, that they don't do that. And I think it can be a choice. You can make the decision if that's something that you want to do, or if you feel safe and comfortable in a relationship, maybe that's something that you want to do because it helps the other person feel connected to you. And encourage people to do things in return. So if you're saying something negative about your partner's beliefs or perspectives, probably not going to help encourage self-disclosure and help them feel more comfortable in the situation. This idea of hiding away your beliefs and hiding away your thoughts probably aren't going to help the other person feel connected to you. And then any time that you're going to betray somebody's confidential information, like all of a sudden your friends go, "Oh, you said blah, blah, blah," that's probably not going to make big brownie points with your partner. So maybe don't share some of that personal stuff with your friends, because they aren't always good at keeping their mouths shut. So, and it's all about, helping a person feel safe and secure. So you want to support that. So one of the ways that we can do that is create relationship talks, and occasionally sitting down and talking about your relationship status with the other person. Talk about how you feel about the relationship or how you feel it's going in the relationship. Help the other person understand, and it creates a forum. And maybe what you can do is avoid some of the conflicts in the future if you're able to kind of discuss them before they elevate. So we talked in the conflict chapter about letting issues build, and the person gets more and more upset because things haven't been handled. Well, if you create situations where you can schedule time just to sit down and talk about the relationship, that can be preemptive. Again, interrupt the conflict that could happen in the future. Being respectful with the other person, being respectful about how they feel, about how you feel, and encourage the other person to talk about their feelings as well as you discuss your own. But if you react defensively or egocentrically, where you're focused on your own needs and or act like the other person's feelings aren't important, not going to be helpful. Or if you avoid or refuse having to talks with your partner, or even if you ridicule them or their need to discuss the relationship, not going to be helpful. So these are all elements that kind of need to be in place in order for your relationship to kind of move forward and for them to feel encouraged about being in a relationship with you. Now, this idea of social networks obviously is not, Facebook. This is actually the social networks that are part of your relationship. So that would be your family and your friends. And if they approve of your relationship, that makes things work a lot better. So having healthy relationships with your family and friends, that can be really helpful in helping that relationship move forward. If they don't like your person, your networks, then that becomes a challenge. So a couple things that you might do is talk about how much you like other people's friends and family, your partner. I really love, the way that your father's sense of humor, or, your mom is an awesome cook, or whatever it is that you, or your father's an awesome cook. Whatever it is that you notice about them, take the opportunity to talk about that and invite them to share activities. So when you have holidays come up, if you can have your partner attend, that would be awesome. Then they can connect with your friends and family, invite them to events like your poker night or whatever that you have. Well, I guess probably don't do poker nights, but things like that where you have connection. And if you can ask for help or advice when needed, that helps those people feel part of your relationship. If you're making critical or disparaging remarks about their friends and family, probably not going to be helpful. If you're trying to avoid interacting with them, also not going to be helpful. So really finding ways to spend time with them. Or I've seen this where they demand that they spend time with them because they don't feel important enough. Not going to be helpful in allowing a relationship to move forward. So very important that you create healthy relationships with other people, with your partner's friends and family. So moving from this idea of how we build these relationships, another one is how you work with relationships that are across distance. And I think a lot of college students, maybe have moved away from home or whatever and left behind, uh, a sweetheart back home or whatever, a relationship. And, for some people, these can actually be pretty satisfying. But some of the challenges that people have is when they reunite, they start to see flaws in the other person. I think if you had the relationship beforehand and you know the person pretty well, you start really feeling like, you have a connection to them and you kind of know who they are. But if you build this relationship at a long distance and then you start, hanging out with each other, then all of a sudden you might notice more challenges and conflicts that show up. And some suggestions that the textbook mentioned was, do things like use technology, use some of the strategies that we just talked about. Those, what were those 7 strategies that we just talked about to help build relationships. And, if you do get together with them and you're now living in the same place, know that there may be a time of adjustment where there might be additional attentions, or you might feel some element of disappointment because you had built this up in your head about what the relationship's going to be amazing and it's going to not have any challenges and it's going to be perfect. Yeah, good luck on that. And you might find that there's conflict because you are trying to figure out who you guys are in relationships. So you may not have had that opportunity, or when you go away to school, you might change a little bit as a person, and maybe what you're looking for, expectations might have shifted, and so you almost have to account for those things too. The person's having different experiences and different things that are happening in their life. So how does that look, and how might that be maintained? So how do you decide if you're going to maintain that relationship? Well, there's 4 factors that the textbook suggests for you to pay attention to. One is if people say they're in love. If they consider themselves to be in love, they're more likely to stay together. So if they've made a commitment to each other, like marriage, they're a little bit more likely to stay together than if they don't have that. So if they don't use that terminology or they don't have that conversation, they may not be as likely to continue. Equity or balance, and this idea that there is the same amount of kind of giving in a relationship is more likely for that to keep or maintain. I know, watching some of the relationships from when I was younger, You know, there were a lot of people that got married, and because they were supposed to stay married, they stayed married, and they just didn't like each other. And they made each other miserable, and they went out of their way to create challenges for each other and throw things in each other's faces that were kind of inappropriate and gross. And so, you know, when it comes down to it, I think now with the mentality that people have, they're not as likely to stay together for situations like that. You know, they're much less likely to say, hey, well, I'm married. I made an agreement to be married. I'm going to stay married for the rest of my life. You know, if the person's not a nice person, you know, we don't live in a world now where you have to stay married forever if it's not a good situation. So I'm not saying people should get divorced. I'm just saying, you know, if there's not sort of an equity or balance between what's happening in the relationship, you know, and there won't always be, by the way. Sometimes there's times when one person has to give more than the other one. But if it doesn't ever balance out, then yeah, that's just something to consider. And then people who are more similar have a tendency to stay together more than people that are dissimilar. And the last one, again, comes back to that network support. If you have good support in your network, you're more likely to stay together. So I think, you know, when it comes down to it, one of the things I say when in relationship, when it comes to making any kind of decision, you know, you can ask other people their opinion, but there's really no true way of, you know, somebody else giving you advice, because that's the advice that they would do. You are the only one that can make those decisions. So really have to sit down and think it through, and you can take other people's advice into consideration, but when it comes down to it, you know, you're the one that's going to make the choice if this is going to be a workable relationship or not. All right, there we go. That's information on relationship management.